young Bobby Engels has a problem. He needs to earn the respect of his peers. So he gets the special Sega Genesis fighting system. It comes with Streets of Rage 2. He saves $40. He gets more moves. He gets more control. Now things are pretty much okay.
I said chocolate chip. Say it. Say it.
Sega!
Hello, and welcome back to Drink the Video Games. This month I'll be taking a look at a game series that not only defined and arguably perfected the beat-em-up genre, it also helped cement Sega as the quote-unquote cool game system in the early to mid-90s. Releasing in 1991 and spawning 3 sequels, these games are commonly mentioned on not only the lists of Sega classics, but as some of the best video games ever made. I'm Brian, and today we're talking about Streets of Rage. In Streets of Rage, a powerful secret criminal organization has taken over your peaceful city. Crime has become rampant, the local government and the police force have been infiltrated, and the city has become a center of violence and crime where no one is safe. Thankfully, our 3 heroes are here to clean up the city. Adam Hunter, Axel Stone, and Blaze Fielding are willing to risk anything, even their lives, on the Streets of Rage. The Sega Genesis, or Megadrive, had been out for a few years, releasing in 1988 in Japan and 1989 to 1990 in most of the rest of the world, and it was doing okay. Sega was the master of arcades, and a lot of their early game library was ports of those arcade games. But then, enter Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991. With a new mascot to call its own, Sega would firmly plant itself as the main and only real rival to the Nintendo. But the Blue Hedgehog wasn't the only thing Sega had up its sleeve. It could make those arcade games exclusive to their own system. So if you like Double Dragon, if you liked Final Fight, if you like Shadow Warriors, then you'll love Streets of Rage. But you can't play it in the arcades, and you definitely can't play it on the Nintendo. You can play it on the Sega Genesis.
The largest and hottest library of 16-bit games plays on Sega Genesis, featuring Streets of Rage, the fighting game that'll knock your socks off, with 40 individually controllable attack moves, and a neighborhood crawling with punks, muggers, and urban slime. Streets of Rage, only on the 16-bit Genesis system from Sega.
So Sega turns to Noriyoshi Uba, who had previously worked on The Revenge of Shinobi, and Hiroki Chino, who was coming off of eSWAT, City Under Siege, and the pair would take elements from both of those games, the fighting and attack styles of Shinobi and the in-game universe of eSWAT, and make their own game. In an interview with Keith Stewart, Noriyoshi Uba says that the design team took inspiration from those other arcade beat-em-ups and looked at Starsky and Hutch and the A-Team because what they wanted to do was not only make their game be multiplayer, but really put an emphasis on teamwork. So it was important that the enemies not swarm the players, but give their characters the ability to utilize special moves they can pull off together. But maybe the most pivotal thing the pair decide to bring over from The Revenge of Shinobi is the composer for that game, Yuzo Koshiro, who would help create the score for their new game. According to the score's liner notes, Koshiro says that marrying the club and techno beats that he knew and loved with the R&B and hip-hop music he was hearing at clubs around the US Army base he was frequenting at the time, it just so happens that that type of music translated really well to the audio capabilities of the Sega Genesis or Megadrive. Their game, Bare Knuckle, would release in Japan in August of 1991, before being released to North America as Streets of Rage in September of that year, with the European release following shortly after. The game would be ported to the new Sega handheld system, the Game Gear, the following year, and the small 18-person team had caught lightning in a bottle. Sega was now the envy of the beat-em-up fighting world, critics immediately claiming it to be one of the best games on the Sega console, some of the best video game music on the system, and Electronic Gaming Monthly calls it the best fighting game of all time in their November of 1991 issue. Now, was it the best fighting game of all time when it released? Maybe. I couldn't say for sure, but I do know that just over a year later, the sequel would release. And it would not only be what a lot of people claim is the best beat-em-up of all time, but one of the best video games of all time.
Where do we start?
How about his knee?
That's his face. If that's his face, what's this?
With Streets of Rage being a success, Sega would get busy getting a sequel put together, but this time they would be bringing in some game developing help to get the game out. Shout Design Works, HIC, and Ancient would be pulling their resources to get the game ready for its late 1992, early 1993 launch. Now, Streets of Rage had done an exceptionally good job of laying out the characters, the setting, the gameplay, and had created a great villain. So when it came time to make the sequel, all of those pieces were in place and the teams could focus on fine-tuning the art and the gameplay. According to Mean Machines magazine, this game would be getting its own special cartridge with 16 megabit of memory. The extra memory would allow for bigger character sprites in the first game, while not slowing down the gameplay, all while increasing the number of playable characters from 3 to 4. Adam Hunter from the first game is out. He got caught by Mr. X, not a good look. But coming onto the team are wrestlers Max Thunder and Adam Hunter's kid brother, the most 90s radical character ever imagined, Eddie Hunter. We'll call him Skate because, of course, he has his trusty rollerblades to get him around the city. Axel Stone and Blaze Fielding are back, and the mission is to go and rescue their friend. So if you talk about what the greatest video games of all time are, there's a decent chance someone will throw Streets of Rage 2 out for consideration. But if you are putting together a list of the all-time greatest video game soundtracks, then Streets of Rage 2 is almost certainly going to be on that list. Yuzo Koshiro is back to create his club, techno, EDM masterpiece, and Motohiro Kawashima, who is the composer and DJ working for Ancient, joins in to bring a few tracks to the game as well.
This is excellent. It's fast and very playable with brilliant music. The aim of the game is to clean up all the streets and beat up all the baddies. This is one of the best games I've ever played. I give it full marks. It's great fun.
This is an excellent game, especially if you've got somebody else to play it with. The only thing that lets it down are the graphics. It was just aren't detailed enough.
The graphics are excellent and all the characters move really well. I love this game.
And so the final scores for Streets of Rage 2, the boys gave it 4 out of 5, and the girls thought it was even better. They gave it 5 out of 5.
Streets of Rage 2 would release in December of 1992 and January of 1993, and it was an immediate hit, quickly taking its place as one of the all-time greats, and still remains on those lists to this day. It would be ported to the Game Gear the following year, and even get a Nintendo 3DS port in 2015. I guess Nintendo could finally do whatever those Sega ads told us they couldn't. So the teams that have brought us Bare Knuckle or Streets of Rage are 2 for 2, but would they be able to round out the trilogy? We'd find out soon because Streets of Rage 3 was already underway.
It's an all-out turf war with more weapons, more moves, and more outrageous action than before. Mr. X has hatched the ultimate evil plot, but he didn't count on a bone-crunching counterattack from Blaze, Axel Skate, and the newcomer Dr. Z. Hit him like a ton of bricks with Streets of Rage 3 from Sega.
For the third installment, the bulk of the game production moved back in-house to Sega, with a new development team at the helm, and the game was pushing for a summer of 1994 release. A lot of the gameplay remains the same as the second installment. Mr. X is still causing trouble and potentially blowing up the city. According to the opening cutscene, Adam is too busy to help, but his brother Skate is back alongside Dr. Zan, a new friend. Oh, and you have to fight a kangaroo. So Bare Knuckle 3 releases in March of 1994 in Japan. Then Streets of Rage 3 releases in July, and the reviews were pretty lackluster. They weren't bad, but reviews were getting harder to impress. I mean, when the first installment is system-defining for the Sega, and the second is genre-defining, where does that leave you to go? There had been 3 of these games on the same system in less than 3 years. Some claimed that the quality of Koshiro's soundtrack fell off, some said that it felt like more of the same from Streets of Rage 2, but it was praised for the graphical enhancements, and the game does look great. But Streets of Rage 3 is where the story ends, or at least stops for a long time. With Streets of Rage about to take an extended break, it seems like it's a good time to see if Michaela from Drink the Movies can come in to help us mix up a cocktail using one of these health items I found laying around here. Well, thank you, Michaela. Welcome back to Drink the Video Games. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to have you on to mix up a cocktail and chat a little bit about a video game that you may or may not have heard of. Now, I'm going to guess that you probably haven't played or maybe are too familiar with today's game or game series, but I just wanted to know, did you have a Sega Genesis when you were a kid, or did any of your friends have Sega Genesis?
I had one friend that had a Sega Genesis. She had a horse, like a real horse, and she had a Sega Genesis.
She had
and
one
I was
horse
so jealous
and one
of her
Sega
life.
Genesis.
Yeah,
Everything
it was
that young
that
Michaela
time.
wanted in her life.
Pretty much. So I watched her play a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay.
We played a lot. of Sonic the Hedgehog. What we did not do was play Streets of Rage, unfortunately. But I feel like I have seen this game because I went and did a little bit of research to not sound like a complete idiot like I always do on this thing. And I feel like this is really familiar to me, but I would have never played it on a Sega. I mean, so unless it also had like an arcade equivalent to it, I think I probably did miss this.
Yeah, no, this game series was pretty much exclusively on the Sega Genesis, or Master System as it's called, kind of in the rest of the world. But yeah, that was one of the selling points for it. You couldn't play it in the arcade, and Sega was really good at making arcade games. So that was a big boon for the system. So you had Sonic the Hedgehog and Streets of Rage, which came out in 1991, and then had 2 entries to follow it in 92 and 93. So it was pretty exciting. You could choose from Adam Hunter, you could choose Axel Stone, you could choose Blaze Fielding. You go around and you beat people up. Last month we talked about Double Dragon. That was a game you were familiar with. So this kind of built on the legacy of Double Dragon and kind of turned into its own thing. And Streets of Rage 2 is held by a lot of people to be one of the greatest video games of all time. So if you're into this genre, you should definitely check it out. Now, one of the cool things in this game is you go around, you're beating people up, right? You're picking up weapons and having these fights to try to get to Mr. X. But sometimes you'll like knock open like a box or a barrel or something, and there will be a power-up item in there. Now, one of these gives you some extra health, and it's like a turkey, like a roast chicken or a roast turkey. Sometimes it's called meat, just in the general. That's the big one. But the other one was apple, and I thought that making it like a turkey cocktail was not a good idea. But I thought an apple cocktail might be better.
I think you're probably right there. I mean, although we've done a lot of weird cocktails over on Drink the Movies. One with sardines. We've done one with like butter washed bourbon. So I bet we could figure something out that was turkey forward, but we'll save that for Thanksgiving. I think the apple is probably the way to go. And this is one of my favorite like super easy cocktails that anybody can enjoy. It's called the Spicy Apple Boost. And it is 2 whole ingredients. It is apple cider of your choosing. Whether you would like it to be alcoholic or non-alcoholic is up to you. But you pour out some cider into a very cold glass, and then you put some Fireball whiskey, about 1.5 ounces at least, into it, and enjoy it and drink it. It's one of my favorite things to drink when I'm playing pool, oddly enough. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm thinking about like being on the streets of rage. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorites too. Maybe it's a favorite now to have while I'm playing Streets of Rage, but yeah, dead simple. 1.5 ounces of Fireball or other like cinnamon flavored whiskey. I think Jack Daniels makes one. There's a couple of others out there, but Fireball is kind of the big brand that everyone knows. That's the one I prefer because it's just like obnoxiously cinnamony. So that's good. They actually make like an apple or like a sour apple Fireball. Now I've not tried that one yet, so maybe that would be good in this too. And then yeah, dealer's choice on your apple cider. You could do alcoholic apple cider, like you mentioned, Michaela, or you could do just like a cloudy, like unfiltered, fresh pressed apple cider. That's probably my favorite one to do, to be honest. Having one of these in the fall, that sounds pretty good. Or you could just use like some straight up like Mott's apple juice. Who are we to judge here?
That's right.
So yeah, this is the Spicy Apple Boost. I thought it was good. I wanted something simple, and I wanted something easy to put together, and something that incorporated apple, and nothing is more classic than a Spicy Apple Boost, I don't think. So Michaela, thank you so much for coming on today and helping me mix one of these up.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I will say it definitely makes me feel like I'm ready to go beat things up and take on the streets of rage.
There you go. That's what we were going for. So thank you so much for joining me. And now let's get back to Streets of Rage 4. According to an article on Sega 16, there were potential 4th installments always either in the works, in the rumor mill, or in the dreams of hopeful gamers. Certainly there would be a Streets of Rage for the Sega Saturn, although story has it that the Eidos interactive game Fighting Force almost became Streets of Rage 4, but no, nothing on the Saturn. The Sega Dreamcast would definitely get a Streets of Rage. No, again, nothing. Not even in development. And when Sega exits the console market and begins to distribute Sonic and other IPs out to various game studios and onto other systems, Streets of Rage lies in wait for 25 years.
I'm Olivier de Rivière, and I'm the main composer on Streets of Rage 4. There is a big story behind me being involved into Streets of Rage 4, because an hour before meeting for the first time with Serial, I was discussing with a friend of mine, and we were discussing Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack, and we were like, it's been such a long time we haven't had a Streets of Rage game, you know, and it was like a sort of a good conversation. And then I meet Cyril, and Cyril is like, oh, you know, I'd like you to work with me. Maybe, you know, let's introduce you with my next game. And I was like, okay, what's your next game? And then he tells me it's Streets of Rage 4. And I start laughing because I think that's a good joke, guys. But, you know, I know where it comes from. And he showed me the trailer. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the fact that, number one, I had just discussed this, you know, with a friend of mine like a few minutes ago. And then this very game is happening. And then he was asking me to do the score. I was like, ooh, I don't know, you know?
Initially, there was a dream of making a remaster of the original Streets of Rage, but Sega would finally license their IP to Lizard Cube and Dotemu Studios, and instead of remastering the first game, they would create the fourth installment of the Streets of Rage franchise. Production on the game would begin in 2018, and we'd be heading off to save the city with a few new characters. Axel and Blaze are back, of course, they're in it for the long haul, but Adam Hunter turns the reins over again, this time to his daughter, Cherry, and Floyd Araya rounds out the team, taking over for Dr. Zan from the third game. The enemy changes too, but Streets of Rage 4 keeps it in the family, turning the Syndicate over to Mr. X's kid, Mr. and Ms. Y. The game releases in 2020, with DLC expansion coming out just a year later in 2021. And after the long wait, Streets of Rage 4 was well received, selling over 2.5 million copies and being nominated for Best Action Game of the Year at the Game Awards. With Axel, Blaze, and crew back, Sega teases the next installment at the 2023 Video Game Awards, and is included in a Sega management meeting later on that gives the title Streets of Rage Revolution. There has been little updates on the game development side, so we'll have to wait and see when and if we'll get another chance to revisit this franchise. But if you don't want to wait, there's no need to worry. The first 3 games are pretty easy to come by, with the original 3 games ending up on several Sega compilations over the years. And if you want to dig further into Streets of Rage, it was featured in a comic run in the early 1990s in the Sonic the Comic children's comic book in the UK, as well as a line of action figures from Jakks Pacific. There's even a potential film in the works. Lionsgate announced in 2022 that they had acquired the right to make a film based on the game franchise, but that's about all the information we have about that so far. And of course, if you want to get the Streets of Rage fix, you can always throw on that soundtrack.
Before we run out of time here, let's go over to GamesMaster for the final challenge.
Back so soon? To sober us up, well and truly, before the evening's festivities, I've opted for a head-to-head bout of fisticuffs on Streets of Rage 2. The object is to inflict terminal damage on your opponent in a best-of-3 fight contest. The dirtiest tactics tend to pay the greatest dividends, so lots of below-the-belt action, please. Seconds out.
Streets of Rage came along at the perfect time, and by the perfect company to make it. Sega was able to take their mastery of arcade games and their 90s attitude to become the only real competitor to Nintendo, and Streets of Rage was a big part of that. It showcased what their system could do, and perfected the formula of the games that came before it. The characters were cool, the gameplay was solid, the soundtrack was incredible. Now me, personally, I don't have a lot of memories with this game, despite starting my 16-bit life as a Sega Genesis kid. So, other than playing it a few times at a friend's house, I never really got into the series all that much until I started to revisit some of the beat-em-up classics in the last few years. But I want to know, what's your experience with Streets of Rage? Did you play the latest installment, or revisit that first game lately? Do you have the soundtrack on vinyl? Do you say Streets of Rage 2 when someone asks what is the best video game of all time? And more importantly, did you have a spicy apple booster today as we took a look at one of the most beloved game franchises of them all? Now, you can let me know all of that stuff on my social media. It's at Drink the Video Games on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And if you want to support the podcast or Drink the Movies, you can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/drinkthemovies. There you'll get access to bonus episodes, hangouts, cocktail chats, behind the scenes, and soon to be coming gaming sessions. So check that out, and we appreciate our patrons so much. That's going to wrap it up for this episode about Streets of Rage. But don't worry, I'll be back next month with a brand new season of Drink the Video Games, covering a brand new topic. Cheers.